Well, in typical fashion, our baby sisters are late. Um, Katie and Kyla are twins, but Kyla's the baby sister. So we're going to begin, but we took a trip. I kind of want to tell you guys how this came about. Crossroads did put the idea in my mind to even maybe go to Israel. I just thought, I don't know, maybe not. I really wanted to go to Ireland. This year, I'd actually planned it spring break. I just thought, you know what, I need to go somewhere while I'm young, while I'm young enough to travel and enjoy. I want to do something. And
I feel the same way.
yes, you should. You should. But we all kind of came about together because Hannah, my little sister, had moved in with me, and we just wanted friends our age to get together and talk about God. So we call it Bible study or BS, where we just visit because we didn't really have a direction to go necessarily. We just knew that we needed a group of women that we loved to lean on each other and talk to each other with. And I invited probably 25 different women from Claude over to my house. I wanted them to come over once a week, maybe once every other week, and only 2 came. And I told the girls, Katie and Kyla, I said, gosh, I'm sorry this is such a bust. I expected more. 7 today said that they were coming, and it's just you 2. And they said, that's okay. What time are we meeting next week? And so for about the last year, we've gotten together almost every single week, and there's nothing, we're not short on conversation, I can promise you that. We end up talking about 4 or 5 hours on a Sunday evening, and I've got to send my kiddo to bed because it's a school night, but it's just been unreal to have these ladies in my life. And the reason Israel came about, we started listening to Lisa TerKeurst and listening to her sermons and reading her books. And I followed her on Facebook. And then we would kind of, whatever's going on in our hearts, we might send a group text and say, hey, listen to this sermon. And another lady, Lisa Harper, I don't know who sent that, but we had listened to her too. And then lo and behold, about a week later, there's something popped up on Facebook. Lisa TerKeurst and Lisa Harper are going to the Holy Land with the Word Alive tour. And so I felt I had to go. And I told the girls, I said, I feel like we're supposed to go to Israel, all of us. Well, how much does it cost? That was the first question out of everyone's mouth. About 5,000 or 6,000 each. I mean, it's a pretty penny, and here I'm a single mom, and Katie and Kyla, single girls. Well, not Katie. Hannah and Kyla, single girls. We just don't have that kind of money hanging around. And I said, let's pray about it and see what happens. I feel called to go. And my relationship with God has not been where he and I visit often. I used to pray and say, forgive me for forgetting about you, God. Forgive me for forgetting to pray. And up until this last 2 years or so, I haven't felt that close, like God told me specifically to do something. And this was the first where I thought, yeah, I'm supposed to go. And not just me, but all of us. And so, the devil creeps in, of course, and tries to keep you down and tell you every reason that you can't. And it took us 3 months, and with the help of people here, with the help of our family, people that just wanted to love on us and see us do well, every cent was paid for. And flight included, play money included, meals. I mean, we stayed at a 4-star hotel for 8 days, 8 nights. It was just unreal how God opened those doors because it was supposed to happen. And I feel like it's really a launching point for us because it just made us, every one of us said, I cannot wait to read my Bible. I'm so excited to read it because I've been there and I know what they're talking about. And the terrain in Israel I felt like we visited 10 different places in America like Los Angeles, New Mexico. It was just huge, huge cities, and then desert. We'll talk about the different places that we went tonight. We can't even get it all in, I know. But as soon as Hannah gets here, y'all are going to get to see some pictures just running behind us, if we can get that going. If not, friend me on Facebook, and we'll... Thank you. Jamie said it'll be on the website, if not. So I just wanted to kind of give y'all a synopsis of how this all came about. And it makes me really excited to encourage you guys, if you're able to go in 2020, go. It completely changed the way that I feel about the Bible. Sometimes it just was words on a page, and now they say that it's a good way to say it is that it's now in Technicolor. It's not black and white anymore. It is real. And so Katie's going to start. The journey there was, we drove to Dallas, flew out of Dallas to Madrid. Took us about 4 hours. That was how long our layover was. Took every minute of that for us to get to our gate and through customs, and it's a ride. But once we arrived, I just want to tell y'all something kind of cool. We got dropped off at the wrong hotel, and the ladies there said, you know what, you're not at this hotel, you're supposed to be at a different one, but they're having supper, just run up there and eat, and we'll get you to your hotel. So we showed up late. There's all 400 people up there listening to everybody talk about what's going to happen throughout the week. And we still haven't even brushed our teeth in 24 hours. I mean, we're just disgusting. And we sit at the back of the room and finishing up our last couple of bites, and here comes Lisa TerKeurst. And has anybody in here heard of her before? Maybe? Well, she's just such a kind spirit, probably in her 40s, and very relatable. She talks in ways that we can understand. Our age group can relate on the day-to-day very well. So here comes Lisa TerKeurst with about 5 of her posse, and it was fun because Kyla said, you know what did Kyla say?
She said, well, we're so favored that they'll probably just come up to meet us.
Yeah.
We won't have to go meet the famous people.
No, we're so blessed by God and so favored that the Lisas are going to want to come meet us. And first night, Lisa TerKeurst comes up and she puts her hand on my back. Hey, girls, did you just make it in? And she just made small talk and asked where we're from. And she said, we're planning on coming to Amarillo. We're wanting to get something together there with Beth Moore. Right? With Beth Moore? So anyway, we're looking forward to that, and we'll let you know if that happens and when it happens. But that was just a little way to kick off our whole trip. And these girls call it little kisses from God, just those little blessings that you notice along the way once your spiritual eyes are open. You see it that way. And we got lots of little kisses from God. So Katie's going to tell you about our first couple of days, and then I'm going to follow up.
Come on. You're making an entrance. One of the Soul Sisters is here. Okay, so like Rachel said, if we tried to tell you everything and everywhere that we went, we'd be here for a week because it felt like a whirlwind. I mean, you no sooner get on the bus, get to wherever you're going, and it blew my mind how close in proximity things are there. And I'm so simple that I grew up in church. We were those little girls that were drugged. We were drugged to church every time the doors were open, and our dad was a deacon in the church at Claude, and we grew up there. And so knowing and hearing the Bible stories over and over and throughout my whole life, for some reason, I never made the connection that the Old Testament places that they talk about are the same places that they talk about in the New Testament. I mean, because they use words like Salem instead of Jerusalem. And I was like, oh, well, cool, this place named Salem, in the Old Testament. well then, Jesus is in the temple in Jerusalem. And I just never made that connection. And so, like, the fact that we could drive all over, us being from Texas, you can't drive all over the state in 10 days. You can't circle it 10 times in 10 days. So the fact that we could drive from one end to the other in just a day or two was just crazy. And the fact that pretty much everything except for Egypt and some other places happened right in these places. And so that was really awesome. But so we would no sooner get on the bus, and then they would show us around these holy places, and then get back on the bus. Let's go to the next one. And you don't even have time to process, really. And but Rachel was saying that Satan was just really trying to work against us. And he did that the whole time, obviously. It wasn't just in the beginning when we were doubting whether he would provide the money or provide a way for all four of us to go. And, a couple of us kept saying, well, if we raise enough money and just two of us get to go, then, that'll be awesome. And Rachel was like, no, I'm sure it's all four of us. We're all supposed to go. And sure enough, he made the way. And so, but our dad got really, really sick. And he was put in the hospital the Tuesday before we left. And he had double pneumonia. He had gotten really, really sick, and he was already having issues with his white blood cell count. And so he didn't really have an immune system to fight this infection that came whenever he got the flu. And so by the time we left by Friday of that week, he was put in ICU. He had a breathing tube down his throat. He had a feeding tube down his throat. And our dad has never spent a single night in the hospital our whole lives. He's just been that hero dad who could do anything and just was never just the strong man, And so it was pretty hard to see him like that. And we never said it out loud, but I know both Kyla and I were thinking, I don't know if I can leave, I don't know if I can go all the way across the world not knowing whether Dad's going to pull through. And his temperature was 103, 104 for that whole week, which is just way too high. And he was just really, really sick. And we took praise music up there, and he was trying to praise, but he couldn't talk. And, they were trying to have him sedated so that his lungs could fix themselves. And it was just really, really hard to leave him like that. But we both felt God provided this way, and there was nothing Satan could do to keep us from doing the will of God. But the whole time before I left, I just kept praying, man, just get him out of ICU before we leave, And I know, God, I know you have this purpose for it. I know that you're going to use it for your good. It's Dad. He's going to bring glory to you. He's just like that, And so I was like, but hurry up, I just need him to be better before we go. And so sure enough, he was not better before we left. But they had switched his medication. And so for maybe 48 hours before we left, he actually didn't have a super, super high fever. He just had an infectious fighting fever, which is between 99 and 100. And so that was encouraging. And luckily, I got a kiss from God before we left by Glenn Spiller. He just prayed that daddy prayer for us before we left, and the one that I felt like if Dad had been standing there, he would have just wrapped us in his arms and done, and he did that for me. And so I felt like that was a blessing for me before we even left. And then we were just so excited, and like we say, we're God's favorite anyways. So when we got there and we said, oh, well, they're going to come to us, and then that happened, we were like, ugh. So we have checklists on our pages of blessings for the day. And the first day that we wrote down, I think that there's 10 on my checklist of just little blessings that God did. But one of the first places we went to was the Garden of Gethsemane. And so for me, that was a beautiful, beautiful place. And I was battling in my mind, different things like, well, this probably wasn't actually the place where Jesus prayed this prayer, but we're close, like it could be anywhere around here, and this place is beautiful. And so that evening or afternoon, Lisa Turkhurst gave a teaching, and she was just talking about life between two gardens and how in the beginning there was the Garden of Eden, and it was perfect, and then, man fell, and she said, but the thing about it is that God gave man the remnant of perfection. And so in our minds, we always have an idea of perfection, even though we live in an imperfect world. And she was saying a lot of times I tell God, if you're a good God, you'll do it this way. And I have this perfect plan in my mind that a good God would do. But when he doesn't do it, I'm disappointed in God. And she said, but he's too good a God to be the good God we make him in our minds. And I thought, wow, like I've made a few plans recently that just haven't happened, and it's not that he's not a good God, and I know that in my mind, but I just don't understand why these things aren't happening. And so then later at the next teaching, she was talking about whenever she was going through a hard time in her life and she got really, really sick. And she was like, she couldn't move. She was in so much pain. And they took her to the hospital, and she was in there for several days on very heavy medication. And anyways, she said when she would pray for God to take the pain away, she just felt like he was so far away. And she's like, man, God, why are you making me do this by myself, And why are you so far away? And she just couldn't see God. And anyways, so she just kept praying like, use me however you want to use me, but just take this pain away. Well, then finally, after they were going to release her to go home because they didn't know what else to do, none of the tests had showed anything, one doctor said, let me run one more test. And so that next morning, he came rushing in there, and he said, we got the results back. We have to rush you into surgery right now. Your colon has pulled away from your stomach wall and is wrapped around itself, and if we don't get you into surgery right now, you'll die. And so if you hadn't been in this much pain, we would have sent you home. And so she said, I've never thanked God more for pain in my life. But she said she had a vision of God when her family came in to pray with her before she went into surgery, and she felt like he was like her dad, and he was holding her. And he was just saying, I would have taken it away. I was listening. I wanted to take the pain away, but I couldn't, or they wouldn't find this. And so obviously, praying for my dad to get well, it really, really hit me hard, because I knew that there was a purpose for why he was in there. And so that was really, really good for me to hear. Well, then the next day, we went to a lot of really awesome places, and I had been hearing the Lord tell me, you need to get up onto the bus microphone, because we were each on a bus full of 45 people, and so we got really close with our bus by the end of the trip, but they had this big loudspeaker, and they said if a teaching hits you, come and share it with the bus. Well, then, of course, me being me, I don't know why, but I always seem to have to hear from God like 3 or 4 times before I'm obedient to go ahead and do it. And so that first day I was like, yeah, that was cool, but I probably won't share it. And the next day they played one of the praise songs that meant so much to me that we had praised with Dad. And of course I couldn't even sing a word of it, because it just hurt too bad thinking about him like that. But I thought, well, I probably should share, because these people probably need to be praying for him. But I'm not going to do it yet, God, and he's so patient with me. But anyways, so the next day we went to St. Peter's, Premise. Yes, the church. And it's actually which it was really cool, because God was showing us, and me and Hannah just went on and on about how these numbers kept popping up. And we know that there are certain numbers that mean things in the Bible, and like 7 is the number of completion, and there's just certain numbers growing up in church like I did that they have a significance, but you don't know that every number does, and you don't know. I never thought about there being specific numbers in the Bible and the fact that they correlated with a Hebrew letter and that they had a deeper meaning. And so the number 3 kept coming up, and so we get to St. Peter's Primacy, and it's where the 3 rivers meet into the Sea of Galilee, and it's where Jesus came and where he called his first 2 disciples. But it's 2 times he had, or 3 times I think, he had told the fishermen, like, here's where the fish are. And they got in more than their boat could carry almost. And so, they think it's because that's where 3 rivers meet and pour into this lake. And so we just kept hearing the number 3. And so Hannah and I looked it up, and it was talking about balance and unity and resurrection and foundation, and just like it's a beautiful number, it's so neat. And so then whenever we got there, Lisa started talking about how Jesus, or I think our guide started talking about how God asked Peter 3 times after he rose from the dead, and he met them there, and he asked Peter 3 times, do you love me? And it was almost like a redeeming moment for me, because I had doubted about my dad. I had doubted, and but then basically God said, do you love me? And I was like, of course I do. Do you love me? Yes, God, I love you. Do you love me? And I'm like, well, I love you. And I just felt reunited with him. I felt that resurrection moment for me. And the 3rd time, it was just like God was saying, you know what? Whenever we have these hard times and you feel far away from me, just think that 3 times. Do you love me? And I'll come to you, and I'll meet you there. And so that was just a really, really cool moment for me. And just, like I said, getting to realize that the Word has so many significant numbers in them. And that, anyways, so the 3rd time that God said, go talk to your bus, I finally did. And I told them basically everything I'm telling you. And we went... I think we were in Nazareth, yeah, and it was a 1-hour tour of Nazareth, and right before we got off the bus, they prayed for my dad, and so we got off the bus, and we went in toward Nazareth, and got back on the bus, and it was pretty much exactly an hour later, and I get a text, and Mom says, they're moving Dad out of ICU, and I'm like, dang it, why didn't I do this 3 days ago? But
Can I tell
anyways,
something real quick?
yeah.
Just to add on to that, I had called Kennedy that night and told her, Kennedy, we had the coolest moment today. We prayed for Ronnie on the bus, and an hour later, he was moved out of ICU. And she said, oh my gosh, that sounds like a Joe Cow story. And I said, yes, it does. Another cow story from Joe. So I thought that was hilarious.
Go ahead. Anyway, so... just to let y'all know, Dad is home, and obviously God worked a miracle in his body and in his life, and his white blood cell count hasn't been lower than this, and so I'll be curious to know what the doctors actually say about what was infecting him, because it wasn't actually in the lungs, and there was pneumonia, and they did have to deal with that, but the infection that they were able to clear out was not in the lungs, and it was a fungal infection. And so everything that we had been hearing leading up to him getting sick, I'm just curious to know how God just kind of wiped that out while he was in the hospital for 3 weeks, There we have the number 3 again. So anyways, it was just really cool. Next.
So the couple of places I'm going to tell you about, mine has to do with water. We stayed in Tiberias next to the Sea of Galilee. And, so many things happened at the Sea of Galilee. Jesus walked on water there. And storms were crazy. I don't remember why they told us why, but it goes in one ear and out the other for me. But storms would just erupt all of a sudden on the Sea of Galilee. Bob probably knows why.
It's 800 feet below sea level.
800 feet below sea level, so winds rush in. So it just turns into a crazy storm this quick. But that morning, we got to go out on the Sea of Galilee, and there were two boats full of people, and we got to sail on the Sea of Galilee. And I cannot tell you how gorgeous the terrain is around it. It looks like Ireland. I mean, just green, and there were mustard seeds is what we learned everywhere. It was just little yellow flowers. I'm so grateful that we got to go in the spring because we got to see all types of different flowers and plants that we have never experienced here. But just that hit me really hard because just having the faith of a mustard seed. You guys have heard this before. You can tell this mountain to move from here to there, and it will. And to see millions of mustard seed flowers popping up across all this green land was just amazing to me. But we got to sail on the Sea of Galilee with a couple of boats, and we had a gentleman out there leading the praise and worship. So nearly 450 people were singing out on these boats, and I just felt led to write and not to sing. And I felt the Holy Spirit there telling me, write this down. Everything that you're feeling, write it down. And I'm really ashamed of my handwriting. I know this sounds ridiculous, but I hate writing because I don't like my handwriting. I'm embarrassed by it. So I just don't. I just have my own thoughts, and I keep them to myself sometimes. But this whole trip, I ran out of ink in one of my pens. I got it just for the trip, and it took me 36 pages of notes to run out of ink. I mean, I just felt God with us the whole time. And it was so cool because once you take the time to experience something instead of just going, you actually sit there and experience a place. You'll find the Holy Spirit there. I mean, you just have to invite him in, and he'll meet you right there, like Katie was saying. But I just wanted to share this, we called it Message in a Bottle, something that I wrote while we were sitting there worshiping and sailing the Sea of Galilee. So I said, I look around at the gorgeousness of this calm, still, serene landscape as the backdrop for the Sea of Galilee. It's overcast and cool. The sun peeks through here and there and kisses the valleys and parts of the mountains. Then I notice a plastic bottle floating. There's a residue floating around it. It's dirty and it's polluting these perfect waters. And I'm highly offended. I'm disappointed. It has no business in this place. And then the thought came to me, why am I not as easily offended by the ways of the world around me? Because here there's all kinds of pollution. The things that we watch and the music that we listen to and the people that we're around can even pollute what's supposed to be perfect and gorgeous. Why do I allow the uncleanliness in my life to pollute the waters of other people's lives? Why do I allow these ugly things to pollute what was meant to be clean? More importantly, did I put it there? If I did, God help me clean it up. Please help me and don't allow me to do it again. So I just felt such a metaphor for my life because there's times when I'm the pollution for other people, when I want to wake up and complain and or yell at my daughter because I haven't had my coffee yet, or something bumps into my happy, and then I'm the one spewing out this pollution, and I shouldn't do that. But it also comes from other places. But I felt like this trip, I got spiritual LASIK. I felt like I had surgery on my eyes and my spiritual goggles are back on. And when I look at things through God's eyes, it just all looks totally different. And without this trip, I don't know that I would have been able to fully do that. But the Sea of Galilee was unreal. It is, I think, 13 miles wide by 6 miles deep. It's a huge lake is really what it is. Here I have some actual information on it. But the Sea of Galilee hasn't been, or the Tiberias where we stayed hasn't really been, what do you call it? Like where a lot of people have moved in and it just, what? Commercialized. So it just looks like it might have looked when Jesus was there. So to me, that was my favorite place. I already talked about Jesus walking on water. But anyway, that whole day, we went a few more places, and it rained on us all day long. It even hailed on us. And we were so excited that evening because we were going to get baptized in the Jordan. And once we got there, it was freezing cold and drizzling rain, and there were swarms of people from all over the world. We had a slew of blue hats, is what we called them. It was some Asian tour buses, and they were everywhere. They wore the blue hats, and Hannah said, "Oh, it's Asian invasion." I mean, they were everywhere and all in our space, and it got to be where it was just like, I can't even breathe. There's so many people here. And Hannah, my sweet baby sister, said, "Isn't this cool how many people are rushing in to get baptized in the Jordan?" Of course, Hannah, you would think of it like that, where I'm over here like panicking. Please don't touch me. I just want to get in line. I'm in line here. You do not cut me. You know, it was just very overwhelming to me. And then my sweet baby sister, "Can you believe all these people?" And it did. It was people from all walks of life, all languages. Yes, French. There were people speaking things. I mean, it was just so cool. We didn't get baptized where Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. This was a wider, bigger area, and it was lush. There were trees everywhere, and it was green. I'm sure that y'all see pictures behind us. But they had 4 pastors down there baptizing all of us. And they stood there in the freezing cold for 3 hours and baptized 270 people. And what I thought was so cool about this trip is some of those people were baptized for the first time ever. And we went through Lifeway.com, Lifeway Christian Bookstore. So for me, I would just think everybody's probably already saved. You know, I just assume we're going on a Christian tour. Well, I shouldn't assume. Lisa Harper asked for people to come up if they want to accept Jesus into their heart, and 11 people came forward. And it was amazing, and I just thought, my gosh, I just wouldn't have even thought to ask. I would just assume we're among friends and we're all Christians. We're all going to heaven. We've all accepted Jesus into our heart, but that's not the case. And I'm so proud of Bob for asking every single week, even though a lot of times it's the same people here. But we can't just assume. We've got to take that one step further and ask. So the Jordan was really neat. Was anybody else going to talk about the Jordan? No? So, do what? We did go there twice. Are you going to talk about that in a minute, Lisa's deal? So, Lisa Harper, the second Lisa, came to us at a different.
This would be the location where they led them across the Jordan River, and so it's actually a different location than the one near Nazareth where Jesus. Well, they don't really know where he was baptized, but they promote that place as the place he was baptized, but they promote the other place as the place where, was it Joshua? Yeah, brought the people over, and Jericho's right there on this side of the Jordan where we went to the second time.
So in the second area of the Jordan, I had people ask me how wide is the Jordan. Well, it varies. There are places where it looks like just a little bitty baby creek, but the Jordan is 156 miles long. And it goes from north to south, from the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea. And so there's a big fluctuation of how the Jordan looks when you guys get to go. I hope that a lot of you take the opportunity in 2020 to go. But
It ain't the Canadian River.
it ain't the Canadian River. Yeah, it was just so cool. But we stood in line and all took turns getting baptized. And the preachers that were there, one of them just looked at me, and we were last in line. I mean, we're bus number 10, the very last bus. We sat in the back of the bus. We're the last to get off. So we're 260 out of 270 getting baptized. And these preachers are tickled to death and said, "You're at the Jordan River. How cool is that?" So cool. So with tears in my eyes, I'm excited I get to see my little sister get baptized too. But we went to another location just across from Jordan, not the Jordan River, but across from Jordan. And we met some soldiers there. And I think that all Israel, all citizens have to be...
The young men, the women are volunteers.
Okay, so the women get to volunteer, but the young men are required to serve in the military for 2 years, I believe, and the women 1 to 2 years. And we met two probably 18-year-old girls, maybe 19. And Lisa said, "How can we pray for you guys?" There was a bombing there about 3 days before that in another location, so it was kind of scary. But one of the daughters said, "Pray for my mom. She can't sleep." And that just hit us hard. My mom got some big prayers that day because there's just, it was really eye-opening to me that even though their lives were in danger, they cared enough to think about their sweet mamas. So that was something that really touched me too. I think that's about all I have to say about the Sea of Galilee and the Jordan River. Next.
So when we did finally end, we left our hotel on the Sea of Galilee, and we went and stayed in a hotel in Jerusalem. And so while we were in Jerusalem, we went to several different places. I think, so on, we're not really going in order here, but I'm supposed to cover day 6 and day 7. But so on day 6, we went to the city of David, and we went to Nehemiah's wall, where Nehemiah rebuilt the wall, and the southern steps, which when you're sitting on the southern steps, you can literally see where the city of David is just right in front of you. And then there's a little valley, and then over here is the Garden of Gethsemane with the olive trees. And there was a lot of things on this trip to me, which, like my sister told you, we were deacon's kids. We were drugged to church. Every time the doors were unlocked, I think we had to walk through them. But so I know the Bible. I've read through it intentionally, you know. I know the stories of the Old Testament, and the second time I read them, I was a lot more excited. The first time I thought they were boring. But then to go to these places where this happened, where, you know, the story of Nehemiah is like, oh, they're all captives, and Nehemiah gets to go back and build the wall, but what good is that, because they're still captives of Israel or Egypt. And but then when you go and you look at how important their faith was, how important it was for them to still be able to worship, how important it was for them to still get to have their own God, and to have that holy place that God promised to them and keep it alive. It's really amazing. Our tour guide, he's native. He lives in Jerusalem. We joke, bus number 10. 10 is the number of trial. And so Doobie, our bus driver, was quite testy sometimes, but we loved him. He was awesome. He knew so much about the place, and he cared so much because his grandpa was a rabbi, and then his Grandpa and his dad experienced the Holocaust. And so he is Messianic Jew or Christian now. So he loves us. Those people there actually really love us. And I kind of thought, oh, I'm going to, a Muslim nation predominantly, they're going to hate us, but really everyone was so friendly and so open-minded. The girls who were, the military girls, they were like, we're so glad you're here. And I was just shocked. I'm like, you are? But they love that we want to learn about our faith. So anyways, but Doobie, our tour guide, he told us that there are actually, 27 layers. Was it 30?
36.
37. Okay, 37 layers of architecture. And that down the 17th layer is where Christ would have existed. 26th. One of the layers, but one of the layers is the southern steps, and it is still wide open. You can literally sit on the southern steps because it's the highest point. And so they built the temple on the highest point. So all of these other layers, they have to dig down and excavate them to find them. And so a lot of these pictures, you'll see excavation, you'll see things dug out. It's mostly rocks. There's not a lot of trees. The trees that are there are olive trees. They have orange trees, which that was exciting. They were delicious. So everything's carved out of rocks. And so when they dig down, they're digging to a structure that's built out of stone. And so when you're in Jerusalem, you're not sure, you're like, okay, this isn't the actual street, but then you go into a museum and they take you down to where they've excavated it out, and we literally got to walk on the street where Jesus would have walked and where he would have carried his cross, and we took our shoes off, and we took pictures, and we just soaked it up, and in that experience, like I said, I know my Bible. I've read the thing. I've intentionally read it in my adult life through. But when I couldn't wait to reopen my Bible, I couldn't wait to go back and see, okay, how many times was Jesus in Jerusalem? Lisa Harper shared with us that there are feasts, and at least 3 times a year, Jesus' family would have came. If not him personally, a member of his family would have came and walked on those steps that we were sitting on. And in the last weeks of his life, he would have been right there in the Garden of Gethsemane somewhere. So we probably walked wherever that was. And so the thing was, I believe my Bible, but when I went there, it was wow, you really are all you say you are. I know you are. You've shown me that several times in my life, but now witnessing this location and knowing the history and reading the Bible and all of these prophecies just lining up so perfectly, you really are who you say you are. And God just whispered to me and he said, you really are who I say you are. And I think that's something that all of these baths that we were cleansed in, the Jordan River, everything, cleansing my soul, it was really good for me to feel washed of this world and to be reunited with that feeling that I'm God's, and whoever he says I get to be. A lot of who I am today, I didn't believe I would ever be. And God just told me, and he brought me here, and so that was one of the big things. I do want to share that according to the prophecy, which you can still celebrate Christmas all you want, but according to the prophecy, Jesus would have been born in the month of Nisan, which is springtime, which would be the end of March and the beginning of April. And so on April 1st, I wrote, "Happy birthday, Jesus." And it was really cool. I don't know why, it's been really cool to me that we got to be there on Jesus's real birthday. I told some people, I'm like, if he met us at the gate and called us home that day, I wouldn't be mad, And then we also went to the garden tomb. I want to kind of explain this. In the garden, you can literally see there's a place on the back side of the garden where you can literally, there's this nice comfortable little gazebo thing that you sit under, and you look out and you can literally see the hill of the skull, or Golgotha. We kind of talked about it. Calvary sounds like such a sweet, beautiful name, but when you look at that hillside, it looks like a skull. It's not beautiful at all. But there's a Muslim grave side on the top of this hill, and there's 2 caves that kind of look like eyes. And then there was, at one point, a sort of a ledge in between them that was the nose. It's fallen off, but you can still see. And then there's a platform at the bottom that kind of looks like a really grim mouth. And then there's the road, and that's the road that would take you in and out of Jerusalem at that time. And so they explained to us that the Roman soldiers, when they crucified someone, they crucified them right there at eye level, so that whenever you're passing through, it was a testimony to people coming in that this is what happens when you commit a crime. And so I think it hit all of us pretty hard that Jesus really did get hung on a cross right there. And we're looking at the place and we're going, you shed innocent blood. And Rachel said it she said it better than I will, but she said, I get mad whenever I get blamed for someone else's, the thing that they did. At work, I didn't do it. So-and-so was in that room or whatever,
Sisters.
And yeah, with sisters, she said, I don't like when someone blames me. I don't like being falsely accused. But Jesus gladly took on our sin. He gladly took on our shame. He took on our pain, our suffering. And he did that fully knowing that that's exactly what was going to happen to him. And he loved each one of us. And when we were in the tomb, Lisa Harper, she told this story, and this girl who'd been through a lot in life, and she was with a bunch of girls that had been out of prison. And she said, just for you, Jesus would have done that. Just because he loves you. And you sit there and you, looking at the actual place, realizing that it really did happen. And then you see the tomb where they laid his body, and you realize, for me? Why would you do that for me? And it just revives your salvation. It revives the fact that, I don't have to be dirty. I don't have to be ugly. I don't have to have sin in my life, because Jesus chose to take that for me. And so those 2 things in Jerusalem, those 2 days were probably the most impactful to me. The whole thing is mind-blowing. I'm excited for whoever gets to go. But that right there was kind of the highlight of my trip. The other thing were the baths. So we went to the Pool of Siloam, and we went to the pools of Bethesda. And they had lots of ritual baths. They were called mikvahs. No, something starts with an M. Anyways, there were lots of different ritual baths. And even on the rooftop of their house, they had a bath. So we saw the place where David it would have been his rooftop, and there were several baths. And they were like, well, this is the place where David saw Bathsheba bathing on her roof. And it occurred to me, like, why has it never... it's just weird to me that they bathed on their roof, But anyway, I love privacy. But so there were lots of different baths. And like Rachel said, water was a big theme through the whole trip. But it was, the thing to me was that God was saying, like, I love, I'm cleansing you. And it's my delight to do that. And they would literally go, the Pool of Siloam, the word shalom means to send. And so when they washed in the Pool of Siloam, before they went and took their sacrifices, they had to cleanse themselves before they could take their sacrifice. And so they went to the Pool of Siloam, and they washed themselves. And it's really not that far from the southern steps of it's separated by a road of business now, so it kind of feels far away, but it's really not that far. And so they would wash themselves to send their sins away. And then same with the pool of Bethesda, that was another pool where people could go and wash themselves, but it was also known as a healing pool. And so it was, another theme that I saw trending in Jerusalem, but all throughout that area were these baths, so that you could cleanse yourself, so that you could be pure enough to go into the holy place. And that's when another thing that impacted me is Jesus took that for you. You don't have to go through the rituals. You don't have to give the sacrifices anymore. You don't have to keep doing all of the stuff. He did the stuff. And you just get to enjoy your salvation. So anyways.
I'm going to see what time it is.
I'm gonna keep weaving on the water. So we went to.
Wrap it up.
Okay, that's okay.
I told you we could talk for 4 hours, right? We'll wrap it up.
So we went to Engedi. Engedi is beautiful. It's a beautiful oasis. Just this place where you think that there wouldn't be fresh living water, and there is fresh living water coming out of these rocks. You just think, how is it coming out of those rocks? It is. And in fact, it floods very, very easily because it doesn't sink into the ground. It just flows over those rocks, over that hard ground. So they have a lot of flooding still to this day. But what was cool about this is what kind of got us started on this journey, or started on our Bible study together. I had gone through a really ugly breakup, and had decided, well, I'd move back home to live with Rachel, and something was stirring in my spirit and told me to fast. And so I was like, okay, well, that couldn't have been from me. And, 3 days, I heard 3 days, which is another 3. And okay, I just did water and coffee for 3 days. And I was in the Word. They told me I was glowing whenever, I had gone through the worst crushing time, but just spiritually, he was just turning everything upside down for me. And also, whenever I got off the plane there, I realized I was immediately thirsty. And not only physically thirsty, I'm still thirsty. My throat is so dry right now. But not only physically thirsty, but spiritually thirsty. And anyway, so you get to this beautiful oasis that's in the desert, which is crazy, where you're thirsty and you find this beautiful water. Anyway, but biblically, it is where, let me see, King Jehoshaphat, in obedience to God, he fasted and praised. And that's what I did during those 3 days. It's also where David hid out in those caves, and he had the chance to kill Saul, who was after him. And anyway, so they submitted their ways to the Lord, and I just thought, what do I need to surrender to God? Anyway, and I definitely can surrender. I definitely can fast. And I would encourage, if you are going on this trip, to fast for however long God tells you to. If it's 30 days, if it's 3 days, if it's 1 day, get spiritually right. Give that up for God and just spend time with him, and he'll reward you. Then we went to the caves of Qumran, which was where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls. So in 1947, so it wasn't that long ago, the shepherd boy was throwing rocks into these caves. He threw this rock and heard a shattering noise. It was pottery. Come to find out, it was the Bible scrolls. And And while we were there, we saw it was the community of the scribes. So they had come to this place, and it was very, very serious. They called themselves the Sons of Light, or the Way, and it was actually a 2-year trial to become a scribe. But they, for purity, washed and bathed, and there were so many baths and they would do this before dinner, after dinner, throughout the day, all the time. They were doing these cleansing rituals. Also, what's cool is there were these jars that held wine in there, and 100 years before Jesus was even here, they used to, the high priestess would give out bread and wine as a tradition. And they believed that the Messiah would also do this, and then this would be kept as a tradition afterwards. And, and we do this in remembrance of him. So taking communion will undo me now, every single time. And we actually got to take communion at the garden, and it was unbelievable. It was to be right there where he died and resurrected and gave his blood and his body. And anyway, so let's see. From there, everything from the Jordan, all these fresh waters flow into the Dead Sea. So even whenever we were getting baptized, it was like our sins were just going down to the Dead Sea and just, they're dead, they're gone. We don't have to fish them back up. We don't have to, that life is over. So that was cool. And as a massage therapist, the Dead Sea was incredible. I could have spent all day and night there. I wish I was there right now. And there are different beaches that you can go to. I don't know where this group will go to in 2020, but anyway, it doesn't matter what beach you go to, it's going to be awesome. And it's so healing. It eats your dead skin. So all that mud and everything, it has so many minerals in it. It's just, I could talk about all of that forever. But it's very, very healing and cleansing. And it's the lowest place on earth, which is crazy to me. But anyway, I wanted to see. There is a long walk down there because it has evaporated or it receded so much. So it did take us a little while to get down to it, but once you're there, and it's not that big of a haul, but totally worth it and awesome. The water's silky and undescribable, but we had the best time, just the best time. And then on our last day, okay, so after all of that, our weeks, now we're pooped because it's been go, 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 go.
16-hour days.
Yeah, 16-hour days, and we're not on our right time schedule. It's just crazy. So we're going to go to Yad Vashem, I think that's what it's called. And it is a Holocaust center. And I told Rachel the night before, I was like, because it was kind of a volunteer day. We could get up at 7 and we could go to this museum for a couple of hours, and then you had basically free time. And I'm like, I've been looking for free time this whole time instead of just 20 minutes to ourselves to go do what we need to do. So I was like, I'm not interested. I don't need to go. Go to bed. We didn't get a wake-up call any other time in this hotel. That morning we got a wake-up call. And
6 a.m.
6 a.m., I hear the phone ring, and I hear, get up. Just my spirit, I just heard, get up. You better go. Okay, I'll go. So I go down to breakfast, and I tell the girls, not these girls, but girls on the bus, and I said, it's going to be a good day. Something good is going to happen today because I have not been wanting to go. So I'm going to go. I don't know. And they were telling me the same thing. Anyway, we get there, and I cried from the moment we walked in those doors till the moment we walked out. These girls will testify. It never stopped. It undid me. And
2 hours, 2 solid hours.
2 solid
Which
hours.
We could have been in there way longer than that.
Oh,
It's so
yeah.
huge.
Yeah. That was rushing it. But anyway, it is very, very emotional. Anybody that has a heart, anybody that has, it's emotional. But I had been complaining about the Asian invasion the day before, and just getting in my space and being, just not being able to communicate, and that just the culture is just different, but I just was baffled by it. And it really made me love all people and not pour hate into any certain type of group or certain type of race, certain type of anything. Every person is beautiful and precious. Every life is. They had a center just for the children, and that was hard. That was so hard, but it was just very, very, very real. Going through this, and it really hit it home. Dad has a fiddle that has made it through, which things don't make it through. They burn everything, and they would still burn it today if they had a chance. But anyway, I just wonder what that fiddle would say if it could talk. And anyway, I could go on about all the stories and the testimonies, but this place was the coolest place, and it has a bookstore at the end of it, which I would bring money for because the bookstore was incredible. Just so much information I never even knew that I didn't know. How connected I was and how much it was a part of my heart. So anyway, that was the end of our trip basically, and then the next couple of hours we got to spend with our people in our group and loved on our new family and made family for life with our bus and with our whole tour. Really, it wasn't even just our bus, but it was all 445 of us. It was incredible, and I wish everybody could go because it's totally worth it. It was so amazing, and I'm so grateful for each and every one of you who helped send us. It was just such an experience, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you. Thanks for letting us talk.
All right, very, very good. Thank you for coming tonight. We're running a little late, but not much. You girls stayed pretty close. God bless you. Have a good evening.